Happy Monday, beautiful people.
Happy Monday to Chaps. Many cultures. How are you, everybody? How's the world? How's the world? How was your weekend?
How was the weekend? Answer it. Somebody talk to us.
Come on, somebody tell me. This is such a one-way street. I never hear them. Brett, how was your weekend?
Well, my weekend was fantastic. Probably not as good as yours. You had a couple of birthdays in the house, I hear.
Oh, yeah. First my wife and then our younger daughter. That was a weekend to remember.
To remember. Lots of throwing paint, I see, but that's for another topic.
That's for another show. Don't spoil anything. I have a whole week planned around this. Listen, bro, I prepare these bits, okay? I prepare this just for you. With everyone else, I just wing it, but for you, I prepare this stuff, okay?
All right.
Don't spoil this for me.
I won't. Okay, so you're prepared, but oftentimes we're not prepared. Oftentimes we have to step outside of our comfort zone. We have to do things in the moment. We have to move. We have to be agile. We have to jigga, right? And in those times, is it not possible for sometimes some of us, or maybe most of us, to lose ourselves a little bit in the day-to-day management across cultures, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, I lose myself. I lost myself this morning, literally, when I walked the dog around our neighborhood. And I mean, I don't want to come off as this strange white dude walking a black neighborhood, but I notice when I talk to my African-American neighbors that my whole vernacular changes, and my levels of rapport building, I adjust that. Okay, so and sometimes I feel like, okay, now it was just this white dude trying to fit in, super woke in this black neighborhood, and then I catch myself saying, no, you were just adjusting. I was still me, but there was this little chip on my shoulder, and like, hey, did you just pretend to be somebody that you're not? And so it's a balancing act sometimes. It doesn't even have to be in different cultures. It can be in your own neighborhood, right? So adjusting your behavior to a different set of normal, quote unquote normal, without losing yourself. There's a whole book around it, I heard. And I think we may actually both know the person who wrote that book, right?
Absolutely. And we just happen to have him in the background. Open the green room door.
And in comes
everybody.
Studio applause, please. There he is.
Yeah. Andy Molinsky, a good friend from Boston. And I want to know why, Andy, you don't have a Boston accent.
It's a good question. I remember the first time I went to Texas, I didn't think I had an accent, and then I visited some of my friends from Texas, and I definitely had an accent. So I think accents are very relative, aren't they?
Well, they certainly are. Yeah.
Thanks for taking time, Andy. I know you're super busy, even though it's virtual teaching now. But you're still teaching class, right? Class.
Yeah, tomorrow.
I guess started at Brandeis.
Yeah, tomorrow morning. Yeah, teaching class. I have international crowd. I'm teaching people from all the way from all around the U.S., Canada, China. I have a student in Nepal this semester, so we're international on Zoom, like the rest of the world.
Yes. So for those of you who have not met Andy yet, Andy is not only a professor at Brandeis University in Boston, he's also the author of 2 best-selling books. Brett, what are the titles of the books? Do we have them to hold them up? I forgot to bring my copies. I'm so ashamed. So one is called Global Dexterity, and I can't run out of the frame to get it, can I? No. So, I shouldn't be doing that.
Usually you do that above your head.
Yeah, but the bookshelf is not behind me today. So one book is Global Dexterity, which I recommend to all my program participants, whether they want to hear it or not. So I've been singing the praise for that song and for that book. And the other book is called Reach. How would you describe in like a 30-second blurb each of these 2 books, Andy? What's the pitch?
Yeah, so Global Dexterity is about stepping outside your cultural comfort zones. So most of the work on culture, as you know, and as your listeners probably know, Has to do with differences, understanding differences, how people from one culture act in this way, how people from another culture tend to act in another way. And what I discovered in my life and in my work with people was that the main challenge that they had wasn't necessarily understanding these differences in theory, but actually transitioning from one culture to the other, stepping outside their cultural comfort zone to be able to take what they knew and put it into practice, which ultimately becomes not only a cultural challenge, but a psychological challenge as well. And so that's what global dexterity is. And the key there is that you're stepping outside your cultural comfort zone, but trying to do so in a way that maintains your sense of authenticity. So without losing yourself in the process. So that's what global dexterity is about. And then Reach, my book Reach in 2017 is not a book about culture per se, but it's just a book actually in general about stepping outside your comfort zone. And that book talks about why is it hard? How do we avoid doing it? We're all really good at avoiding stepping outside our comfort zone one way or another. And then the meat of the book is on how you can do it more successfully. And it charts my research. I did a lot of research across professions and across different tasks, all sorts of people in all sorts of roles and jobs and tasks in countries, stepping outside their comfort zone. And I looked at what distinguished people who were successful from those who weren't. So that's what that book's about.
So
I found it.
There you go. It's cool. It's a cool cover, isn't it? I can't take credit. We authors, by the way, have nothing to do with the covers, and usually have nothing to do with the titles either.
Oh, really?
Oh.
So
Yeah.
did you come up with a title, or did they push that on you?
I think that one was a collaborative. It's like, I'm thinking back to 2012, so 8 years ago. I think that was like, I emailed 40 different ideas. They emailed back ideas, back and forth. And at some point, something emerges. But, usually, authors usually have some level of input into the title, but they don't have the final call. And they definitely don't have the call on the title, on the cover.
Well, and I think it depends a little bit on who the publisher. So this isn't just self-published nonsense. People, this is Harvard Business Press, right? So this is some legit stuff here. These stepping outside the comfort zone. I don't know how many times I've heard this, and we've all seen the memes and we've all seen the Instagram posts around this. Nothing grows inside the comfort zone. Blah blah blah. So it's become such a overused phrase. And while it's true that this is the thing with these overused phrases, we read them, we hear them, and we tell them to each other because there's truth to it, right? It's really the growth really happens only if you stretch your limits of being comfortable with a certain situation. So why is it so dang hard? And what will be in your books, what tips do you give so people actually do take that first tippy-toe step in order then to get a little bit of success and maybe step further?
Yeah. So why is it so hard? It's hard. It's hard for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's hard because, and I call these psychological roadblocks in my books, the idea that it doesn't feel authentic, which kind of by its very nature, stepping outside your comfort zone is probably going to feel to some degree inauthentic, like it's not you. And incidentally, when I talk about these psychological roadblocks, they have emotions associated with them. So if you feel inauthentic, you might feel anxious. And when you feel anxious, you tend to avoid things, right? You want to relieve your anxiety, which is sort of the opposite of what you need to do when you're trying to engage in another culture or in a situation outside your comfort zone. So people can feel inauthentic. They can feel incompetent. They might worry they don't have the skills. They might worry they look foolish. They might worry other people will see them as foolish. They might worry that people won't like this new version of them if they're stepping outside their comfort zone. Maybe you see yourself as a nice person, as a kind person, as a do-gooder, and you find yourself in a role where you have to deliver bad news or critical news, or you're going to say something that really disappoints someone.
All right.
No one wants to feel that way. And but at the same time, it's a critical part of your role. So that would be what I would call the likability challenge. And there's a variety of these psychological roadblocks that people can experience, one or more of them. And those can create anxiety. They can create guilt. They sometimes can create shame, whatever it is. And those negative emotions pull you away, right? And so that's the avoidance factor. And so how do you avoid avoidance? How do you, muster the courage? And I think it really is courage, because courage is Courage is taking an action, not when there's no fear. It's taking an action in the presence of fear, right? So that's what you need to be able to build in people, whether it's crossing cultures or simply crossing into situations that you know are important but are outside your comfort zone.
Right.
I think in Reach, which I just finished Reach, I love the end towards the end of the book where you mentioned a lot of the myths.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these myths that are thrown out there, even the simple ones like, just do it, just do it. It's wonderful people around you who are not in your situation. They're telling you, find the courage, you can break through. Yeah. And which sounds great and simple, but it's something that's just one example, one of the myths that you blow up. But there's a lot of them. And I really like that part of it, whereas you're not certainly, disavowing some of the things that have come before you, but you're just looking at it through a critical lens and saying they just don't always work for everybody, especially if it's a cultural thing.
Or if you look on the internet, if you Google comfort zone, you're going to see people jumping off cliffs, jumping out of planes, the cliff divers in Mexico or whatever, just do it. Or maybe even the fish jumping out of the fish bowl. You've seen that meme. So the thing is that
more than once, yes.
Right. So just do it. Just take the leap and so on. I'm not saying that taking the leap isn't important. It absolutely is important. In fact, it's the only way you're going to learn. If you avoid something, you're never going to learn. And there's tremendous power in learning. When you actually step outside your comfort zone and try something, you can benefit from the power of self-discovery. Right? You can maybe discover that it wasn't. Hey, this actually wasn't as hard as I thought it was, or I'm actually better at this than I thought I was, right? And those are self-discoveries, which are so important. They're critical fuel for you to actually avoid avoidance and try something again. The problem is that if you never get the courage up to do it, you're never going to benefit from that self-discovery. And the reason that those memes, like, just take a leap or whatever, they're useful, but at the same time empty, is because there's a whole backstory towards like what enables me to get to the point where a leap is possible, right? That's the problem. That's the missing piece.
No, I wonder how much social judgment plays a factor in this, because if you look at little kids, toddlers who learn how to walk with their little diapers on, and the diaper may be already a little bit heavy because there's already been some business, then they're trying to get up and they start wobbling around, and they either fall flat on their belly or on their butt, and sometimes they hurt themselves, but that doesn't make them stop trying, right? So it's not like, oh, this walking thing doesn't work, I'm gonna quit doing that because that's all a hoax. That's what adults make look so cool, but I don't want to do it anymore. So kids don't stop doing that, right? Because they don't feel judged. But at some point when our peers' validation of us, when our peers' opinion of us begins to matter, that we second guess that decision making, that we start thinking, oh, am I going to look weird? What are people going to think of me? So that's, at least in my experience, there's this, sure, it's another meme or something, but the less I care what other people think about me, the less fear I have stepping out of my comfort zone. So to me, at least, I don't know how you guys feel about this. It's my peer review that I'm concerned about, or beginning to be concerned about less and less. But across cultures, that is difficult to read because you don't always know what other people's view of you will be, or how they perceive you as stepping outside your comfort zone. That's when our system of reference is a bit whacked up, right? Yeah,
I would say what you're talking about to me is, like, from a psychological angle, is like an individual difference. It's a characteristic of personality that you might have more or less of, and I think there are a lot of those personality characteristics that matter. Whether it's about stepping outside your comfort zone, whether it's about crossing cultures, there are a lot of individual differences that matter, and so that would be one of them for sure.
Yeah. I also I've heard this phrase before, and it's another one of these axioms that can be either very true at face value or that are a little bit complicated. Definition of fear being the anticipation of pain. So we don't do something because we expect a negative response, right? is that our reptilian brain telling us this could be dangerous potentially? So I'd rather not try to let somebody else try it before I do it, or is this? I'm not a psychologist. What could that be? That anticipation of negativity instead of anticipating something positive.
Yeah, I mean, fear is about predicting the future, and
right.
it's important for us. Sort of over time, it's been very important for us when we see a stimulus, right? If we see a bear, the reaction to actually no. By the way, it might not be the right thing to run if you see a bear. I'm not sure about that. So I don't want to give people the wrong advice. But if you see something scary, in some cases, it actually is the smart thing to do, to flee.
Right.
The problem is when that dynamic gets transposed on situations where our capabilities actually and our interests and our motivation is to actually try to overcome that thing, but that impulse pulls us away. Right. That's where our sort of reptilian brain can get us into trouble.
Great.
And Patricia has a great question here.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brett.
Great question here from Patricia. Don't you think that we should care what others think of us when we're dealing with culture that is trust and relationship orientated?
Absolutely. I don't think I think what others think of us in a culture in any situation is really obviously very important, right? Because the whole goal is that we want to be able to build rapport, right? Rapport is the seed of trust. It's the seed of a relationship. It's the seed of a connection, which is essential for being able to do business, being able to do whatever, or quite simply, just even getting to know someone, right? Learning and so on, feeling close to someone. So you want to do what's expected and appropriate to an extent. What I find, though, and this gets back to global dexterity, is that sometimes people have the mistaken view that what's accepted or what's appropriate is almost like an archery target. Imagine, you're shooting an archery bow and it's a target and you're trying to hit that center target. But the reality, and I call the term the zone of appropriateness, that's the concept they use in global dexterity, that there's actually there's often a wider range than you think in a new culture. Not in every situation. There's some situations in some cultures where it really is super narrow, right? I don't know, like I've never been in a Japanese tea ceremony, but I'm guessing something like that's highly ritualized. There's a really narrow band. But in many cultures and in many situations, there's a wider band which gives you opportunity to talk about was it Patricia? Was that her name?
Yes, Patricia.
Was saying to sort of like convey a positive, appropriate impression, but also be yourself in the same process. That stay true to yourself to some degree. Sue asked zone of appropriateness. Yes, that's what I mean. Like it's a concept. The idea of a zone of being appropriate in a new culture. It's not that you have to hit that target perfectly, but that there's a bit of breadth there for you to also be yourself.
And by the way, we'll be able to tell you about the Japanese tea ceremony too.
Right.
And your zone of appropriateness concept, so to say, is something that I've been using extensively. So thank you for giving us a terminology for many of us in the industry who've been using it. So I usually wear like something with a rubber band around my wrist, or something that is extendable to a certain degree, either it's cool, around my wrist or around my neck, to showcase it to clients. Say, hey, this is, you can stretch this. It will go back to its original shape if you don't overstretch it. If you overstretch it, it will snap. But you can train it. It's almost like a muscle. You train your behaviors to get more dexterous, I guess, or to get more flexible and adjustable. So I like that concept quite a lot, and I think it helps drive home the idea of adjustment not being rocket science, or not being an exact thing. Which, I mean, I deal a lot with clients who work in very tech heavy fields or engineering heavy fields, so their minds are used to this needs to add up by the micromillimeter, and this has to be exact, which in their field it does. However, cultural comparison is not that. Social sciences is not math, physics, chemistry, or biology. So there's we need to allow for some variances. And I think that concept that you illustrate in that book is quite helpful in doing so.
Even for the scientists, though, they have equivalent concepts like standard deviation, variation.
Right.
You know, so there's the mean, let's say there's the mean and the standard deviation across the mean, or there's a normal curve. Like, I think science understands that too. So yeah,
they do. But when we introduce it to them, or when we put a framework around it, then they get it. But then you come in with cultural dimensions. You come in with these grids and dots on grids and cultural dimension comparison frameworks. You're like, oh, really? Is it always like this? No. Variety, zonal.
Yeah.
So Sue tells us about the Japanese tea ceremony, which is a prescribed ritual. Not sure if I would put it in the category of appropriateness, giving a counter opinion in a tense business situation. Okay, maybe I don't get the question, but maybe Sue can elaborate in a further comment, or you guys know what you mean.
I think I see what she's saying. I think what I was talking about was the idea that imagine you're at a tea ritual and you break. I mean, so we're way outside my knowledge zone.
Yeah,
not comfort zone, but knowledge
same
zone.
Here.
but you know, I can imagine that in a highly ritualized situation with a prescribed script and ritual, if you act and you break the rules, that would be an example of being inappropriate. That's what I meant there.
Right.
You can also be inappropriate in a tense business situation as well. There's different contexts. I mean, situations are scripted. There's in our lives, we have scripted situations. We internalize scripts. Scripts can be tighter. Scripts can be looser.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the core question about many times having our clients tell us, you know, when do I stay true to myself? How do I stay true to myself, even though I'm trying to be appropriately respectful for the culture that we're going into? But after a good period of time, and I guess in terms of at least in the initial adaptation phase of when you're working in a new country and new culture, there is often the feeling that you're not yourself anymore. You can't be who you are naturally in your own environment. So am I losing myself? We can call that, we talked about culture shock on Friday, but that culture impact, that is, I really am missing who I am, or the people around me, who the people around me make me feel. So how do we, in terms of some of your work, what have you discovered some of the things that people have done to stay true to themselves while also being respectful and appropriate as leaders, as family members, as social interactions?
I think it's interesting. I think that when you were just talking, I was just thinking to myself, it's not just a cultural phenomenon. This would be true if you were even taking on a new role in an organization. Like all of a sudden, if you're a consultant and you've never been someone who's pitched a project before, you've never been someone who's given a final presentation to a client before, something like that, you're young in your career, you probably would also feel outside your comfort zone. You probably also wouldn't feel like yourself. And so what would you do to build and craft your professional repertoire, your professional self? I think what you probably would do is you'd watch a lot of other people over time and develop maybe some mentors, but also some models. A model might be someone who you watch and observe. You might see 5 or 6 people who are in your orbit doing this, and you might pick and choose different elements of them that seem to be appropriate and effective, but also kind of fit with your style. And then ultimately you take together those ingredients to craft your style, which is sort of the idea that I talk about in a lot of my work, which I call customization. The idea that you can customize your style. Of course, you have to maintain effectiveness, maintain appropriateness, but you can customize it to you. And I think that's kind of what we naturally do in a lot of things. I mean, frankly, I think I did, my kids are older now, they're 14 and 16, but you do that with parenting too. You know, I think and that's something outside people's comfort zone too, but you watch and observe and you craft your style.
Yeah, and now that you're talking about parenting, I noticed that with our kids too. As Brett said, we had 2 birthdays this weekend in our house. Our youngest just turned 15. And you can tell your kid all you want. You can tell them, do this, don't do that, and basically give them the script. They may or may not do that. However, they watch closely, especially in their preteens, they watch closely what their closest adults around them do. And then older kids around them, and they model. We as humans, I think we model strategies that are successful in others. We see, okay, he or she does this and this and this, and then that leads to that outcome. So I can, if I do the same thing, then my outcome might be a bit more predictable. So success modeling is something that really helps, to your point. It really helps adjust yourself in a way that is less fraught with this inner mind chatter. Am I doing this right, or am I losing myself in this process? No, you just surround yourself with people who are successful and observe closely what is it that they do that leads them to the desired outcome. So we teach that concept a lot in our NLP work, success modeling. It's a proven concept.
And I think by the very fact that you see multiple people do something very differently, but also are effective, demonstrates to you that there's no single one way. It normalizes the fact that there's a wide range of ways to be effective, and you just have to use the qualities and capabilities and resources that you have to be effective, in a sense, and to piece together and combine different styles, different tactics, different strategies to come up with yours.
Brett, what does Sue say?
How to give a good first impression. This is an example of a potential challenge in terms of being authentic versus being culturally appropriate. Goes to Patricia's point about building trust. Yep. Absolutely. And so you've got some information. You've actually got a course you do with Global Dexterity, Andy. So and there's a chance, I guess, this week. It's why we wanted to get you on early this week, is to there is a webinar coming up. It's what, Thursday, correct? Yes.
Yeah. So we have a Global Dexterity Train the Trainer course, which is one of the most fun things that I've done recently. I love doing it. It's such a cool experience to work closely with people and certify them as global dexterity trainers. And so we have a webinar coming up on Thursday. I think it's 1 o'clock Eastern, if I'm not mistaken. Brett, you have the link. There's a link that you could click if you're interested.
Yeah, if you click at this in the comment box, wherever you're watching this, whether you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or wherever else, follow the link in the comment section, and that will lead you to the Eventbrite page where you can register for the webinar.
Awesome.
And you can also go directly to the page where Andy's got.
Yeah, well, you can check out the page. The page won't have this page won't have information about the webinar, but this page describes the course. So you can take a look at what the Train the Trainer course is. You can see some endorsements from people who've gone through it. It's for anyone out there, if you're a coach, a consultant, a trainer, and you deal globally, cross-culturally, check it out. I'd love to have you come and have a look.
Absolutely, and of course, grab the books, because personally, it's great. I mean, it's this is not a paid endorsement, by the way. This is just because we like
checks in the mail. Right? Checks in the mail. Right?
I should say, I mean, in terms of the paid side of it does talk about stepping outside your comfort zone. It's always been a challenge for me to kind of do exactly that. Like, say, you should look at my course, because I don't come at this. I'm not a full-time business person. I'm a professor, and this is stuff I do on the side, and I do it because it matters to me. That's why I do it. Yes, of course, there's a fee associated with it, but that's not why I'm doing it.
No, well, I think that's a good point, and that's why I kind of love even the super uber, or what we perceive as a super uber successful people that do this kind of thing, like Gary Vaynerchuk. He had this great book of jab, 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 punch, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that was, which was about give, 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 give. It is literally give, give, give. And as somebody who consumes a lot of Andy's content and is an active member of the groups that they're just a bunch of fun. And I think that when it may not suit everybody. We tell that our stuff may not suit everybody either, but that's just because we're just human beings, right? But we're still comfortable in doing it, and that we love coming along and giving this information to the world. But personally, I think you should push it a little bit more. And I know you're a humble person. You're a humble person, very, very highly accomplished, and certainly have the chops and doing great work in giving content out there for free to people. And just check out it. And it's all about community, really. That's the part of it that I love. So thank you very much. And that was great. Really appreciate you taking the time and to run us through those.
Yeah, and we should also reveal to the audience that when did we decide we were going to do this?
Yeah, well, yeah. So we were planning last week, and then I dropped the ball a little bit because things got. And, you pinged some on Monday. You said, "Remember we talked about doing a show today?" And then Andy was kind enough, because he was out walking his dog probably, and yeah, we should do that today. So,
no, I have no problem hopping on. I love doing this kind of stuff. So, I've checked out your show on Facebook. I think, is it Facebook or LinkedIn? Where do I see? Maybe I see it both places.
Yeah, well, actually, we haven't been given the fairy dust of the LinkedIn Live yet, but hopefully that'll come later. But we're on YouTube, and we're certainly on Facebook Live every day, and
cool.
It's just a lot of fun. We just love doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on. I always like talking to both of you. So
you're very welcome, and thank you for everybody for your comments. Friends out there, the comments and questions, keep them coming even in the replays. Any questions for Andy, any information that you'd like to share yourself, and stick with us as we keep. There we go. See, good. We got a few people caught live. It's good. See, Sue, we used to do this very early in the morning, and it was very early in Portland for Sue. But so we've changed our whole format just for Sue. Don't feel bad, Sue. We love you. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks, Andy, again, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye
for now.